Welcome back. I watched a lot of I watched a lot of stuff this month. I had a lot of cool review assignments, some new stuff, some retrospective older stuff. I did a lot of reviews for the channel. There was a 1 week, a couple of weeks ago, I did 3 reviews for the channel in 1 week on top of the regularly scheduled Friday videos and on top of having a full-time job. So that was fun. But yeah, somehow this was a really busy month. I somehow still managed to find time to watch an absurd amount of films and television. So let's dive on in. Silicon Valley. I started rewatching Silicon Valley last month and finished it this month. And you know, it's still really funny right up to the end. But you kind of you lose a bit of the magic when Ehrlich left the show, because he was one of the funniest characters, and his, you know, Jin Yang was always still really funny right up to the end, but his dynamic with Ehrlich was so special and so funny, and so, you know, when you break them up, you're missing that magic. And I've gotten my dad into it. My dad, on my recommendation, has started watching it, so that's been fun to kind of relive it and talk about it with him, and kind of as he's been going through it. Mad Max, the original Mad Max, which I hadn't seen in a while. I rewatched the sequels more so than the original, because the original, or at least I remembered the original not being as action-packed, not being as gonzo post-apocalyptic craziness, and that it's more of a grounded dystopian police thriller. And it is, but there's a lot of great action in it too, considering the shoestring budget George Miller made it on, and how it was like this tiny little indie movie that he, you know, like a scrappy homemade DIY kind of action film. The action is incredible. The car crashes and explosions and car chases and the stunts are amazing. It just goes to show he always had it. Like, he gets $200 million to make Fury Road or Furiosa, and he can make it this huge epic Hollywood production and really realize his full vision. But back then he still had a boatload of vision and the drive to make these crazy car chases and explosions, even though he didn't quite have the means to do it on a Hollywood blockbuster level. It's really impressive, and it's just a great movie about the collapse of society. Sinners. I went back and rewatched Sinners. I went with my dad, and it's just so incredible. The box office success of it is so deserved. It's so, you know, people have been saying they want to see original films, they want to see something worthy of the big screen that isn't IP franchise stuff, and for the longest time it seemed like, no, you don't, because when something original comes out, you don't watch it. But this was like, it's big and bold and entertaining and scary and crazy and thrilling, and it has these deeper themes and these bigger ideas and social commentary and historical commentary, but never at the expense of spectacle and entertainment. It's kind of, they both go hand in hand, and it's a wild ride at the movies, but it's also like this examination of Jim Crow era politics and racial politics and race relations, and it was amazing to see that an audience responded to it, and it's a bona fide huge hit, and I can't wait to see what Ryan Coogler does next, because he's a visionary, and, you know, he'll have a blank check now. He'll have the Tarantino deal or the Nolan deal, where he can have any amount of money to do whatever the hell he wants, and he hasn't let us down yet, so I'm sure he'll seize that opportunity and do something really cool. Smile 2. I skipped this in cinemas because I liked Smile 1. I thought it was a really well-made horror film, but I wasn't like blown away by it. It wasn't amazing, and it's very derivative of other horror concepts. You know, it's kind of like the parasitic element is very much like It Follows, and the creepy smiles we've seen before. It's you know, it was nothing new really. But I thought, you know, I liked it enough. It was well made enough that I'll check out the sequel when it comes to streaming. And it came on Paramount Plus this month, and I thought it was fantastic. I just thought it was so much better than the first one, where it's about the monster of fame. It's about this pop star. It was kind of like Vox Lux, which I watched a couple of months ago, the Brady Corbet movie with Natalie Portman, where it's about a pop star who is under so much pressure from fame and fans, and having to do these huge concerts and being dependent on an addiction, and kind of just like collapsing under that pressure and having a complete mental breakdown. And you know, Vox Lux is the prestige drama movie version of it, and this is the horror movie version of it. And I thought this was better. This was more effective. I mean, Vox Lux was good, but it's not. This was more powerful, I think. And Naomi Scott, I think it is the lead. She was incredible. She gave an absolutely incredible performance, which, you know, I've seen the Aladdin remake that she was in. I didn't know she was capable, because obviously, you know, that role didn't ask much of her. But this does. This asks a lot. This asks for a complete psychological breakdown, and she delivers. She really gets into that mindset. And that can't have been easy. And there's so many sequences in it that were so good. There was a bit where she's being followed around her apartment by this like troupe of backup dancers who are like the smile entity. They're smiling, and they're kind of like all connected together as this like one single entity. If she backs away one step, they get one step closer. And that whole sequence was magnificent. That was fucking incredible. Thunderbolts. This it's been a shame to see this one underperform at the box office and kind of do about the same business that Captain America did. Because for the last few years, it's kind of seemed like if Marvel does a kind of a lackluster film that, you know, whether it's Quantumania or something like that, that'll underperform at the box office. And then something comes out that's actually really good, whether it's Guardians 3 or Deadpool, and people are saying, actually, this one's really good, watch it. They do really well. They go back to the early days numbers. But now, after Captain America Brave New World was just so underwhelming and so nothing, it seems now, even when something really good comes out, because I thought Thunderbolts was great, but it's not doing any better than Captain America did at the box office, and it really should be, because it's everything Captain America wasn't. I think I said this in my review, where it's like Captain America was a corporate product. It was made by a corporation that had shot and reshot and just cobbled together this thing to get something out in Q1 of 2025. Whereas Thunderbolts is a director with a vision, had a story to tell, and had ideas for where to take these characters, and it's this interesting exploration of mental health and how you can't fight it alone. If you're depressed or anxious or traumatized or whatever it is that's tearing you up inside, you need to reach out to people. You need a community of people who are going to get you through it. And it's a really beautiful message, and it's told beautifully. It's visualized beautifully. You know, the final battle isn't just a big battle sequence about spectacle and action. It's really about going inside the mind, going inside the trauma and fighting it from within, you know? And Florence Pugh's incredible in it. David Harbour's really funny in it, and Lewis Pullman was fantastic. It should have been a much bigger hit, but Marvel has just completely destroyed their goodwill, you know, to the point where now if people even hear this one's really good, it's worth your time, they're still a bit trepidatious, like maybe I'll just wait till it comes out on Disney Plus. And I can't blame them. Like, if you're this hit and miss for this long, because I think it's been, what year are we on now? I think it's 6 years since Endgame, or 7 years, and in all that time there's been no consistency. Whereas from Iron Man to Endgame, it was more or less consistent. It was consistently good and occasionally great. Whereas since then, it's been between great and pretty good and terrible and unwatchable and amazing, and it just is all over the map. And when you have this model that requires audiences to watch everything needs to be worth watching, you know? But Thunderbolts really is. So if you haven't checked it out, if it's still in cinemas, or I don't know if it still is or not, but it's absolutely worth checking out on a big screen. Ash. It's a weird little kind of gonzo cosmic sci-fi horror movie with Aaron Paul. I quite liked it. Like, story-wise, it was kind of, the twist was pretty predictable. It's basically like sort of like Event Horizon light. It's Event Horizon, but not as wonderfully fucked up as Event Horizon. But visually, it was incredible. I thought that there's these very surreal cosmic landscapes that I thought were really phenomenal. So that was, for that alone, it was, you know, a visual treat. It was worth checking out. Scarecrow. This is a great little movie from the 70s. After Gene Hackman had passed away, and a lot of people were talking about what were his best films, or what were their favorites of his films, or his best performances. And this one, Scarecrow, kept coming up, and I'd never even heard of it, because obviously, you know, a lot of people were saying The French Connection or Unforgiven or Royal Tenenbaums or The Conversation and all the, you know, the go-tos. But I'd never heard of Scarecrow. It was getting a lot of praise, and so I bought it on Blu-ray, and it's incredible. I absolutely loved it. It's very 70s, very bleak and very darkly funny at times, and then at times not so funny and harrowing. It's kind of like a bit kind of Midnight Cowboy-esque, where Gene Hackman and Al Pacino are these two kind of vagrants who are hitchhiking across America trying to get to I can't remember where they're going. They're going to some city where they're going to open a business together. And they're clinging to this dream, and as they make their way across the country, and they're facing all kinds of personal tragedies and obstacles and unforeseen horrors, it becomes more and more clear this dream isn't going to come true. This dream is never going to be achieved. And the closer they get to it, the more and more distant it feels. But it is really about this relationship between these two guys who really are like brothers, because they're the best of friends, and then they have this bit of falling out, and then they're the best of friends again. And it's interesting to watch. They had amazing chemistry, Hackman and Pacino. You know, I don't want to spoil any of the specifics of what happens, but some really horrible things happen to them. By the end of it, like, the Pacino character's kind of losing his mind, and it's heartbreaking to see, because it's prime Al Pacino, so he's playing it so believably and so authentically and so heartbreakingly. I thought it was a really great film, and I agree with everyone saying it's one of Hackman's best, and it's one of his most underrated, because I'd never even heard of it until he died. Black Widow. After watching Thunderbolts and really enjoying Florence Pugh and David Harbour, and I rewatched Black Widow, which I hadn't seen since it came out, and because at the time I found it kind of meh, you know. I enjoyed it a lot more this time. I remember being disappointed by the third act, and the third act still is very disappointing now, but it starts out as kind of like the Marvel version of a Bourne movie, where you got this like rogue secret agent on the run from the government, and the action's very grounded. It's not like gods versus aliens. It's like motorcycle chases and like gunfights and fist fights and just grounded, normal, regular action scenes. And they're all done really well. And then Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh have this really fun dynamic as sisters, like estranged sisters who've come back together, you know. And then, you know, then they break their dad out of prison and they reunite with the mom, and this like kind of like dysfunctional adopted family unit. I thought it was a really cool, fun, emotional core for this story. But then you get into the third act and they go onto the flying red room in the sky and the things plummet into the earth, and it just becomes like another standard, typical Marvel final battle. The kind of thing I really like that Thunderbolts subverted is this is a prime example of it. And but overall, I actually really enjoyed it. I think the first time I watched it, I was thinking too much about the flaws, and then now I'm watching it again, I can kind of appreciate the strengths. Terrifier 3. Actually, really, I know it's kind of like Marmite, where people either love the Terrifier films or despise them. I'm in the love them camp. I love these movies. I think what Damien Leone is doing is he's just having a ton of fun with how far can I push the envelope of gore, and I'm here for it. But Terrifier 3 never came to my local cinema, so I didn't get to watch it on the big screen. I had to wait till it came to Paramount Plus. But it was worth the wait. There's some really gruesome stuff in it that is a lot of fun. You know, I just find Art the Clown and his grisly adventures endlessly watchable. I really enjoyed the first two, and I thought the third one, it's, you know, he's still got it. And now they're doing Terrifier 4. I think might be planned as the final one, I'm not sure, but it's still going strong. I actually think maybe they've gotten better with each installment, which is rare in a horror franchise. Margot at the Wedding. It's a Noah Baumbach movie I watched years ago, and came to Netflix, and I thought, oh yeah, I quite like that. I'll watch it again. There's a great cast. Nicole Kidman and Jennifer Jason Leigh and Jack Black, all caught in this. In the lead up to a wedding, there's all kinds of interpersonal problems that arise, infidelities and betrayals and arguments and fallings out, and it's classic Noah Baumbach, where it feels so real and human, and everyone has a lot of flaws, but there's also things that are lovable about them, partly thanks to how the actors like Jack Black play them, you know. And the conversations just feel real. I'm always impressed by like his dialogue sounds like improvisation, because it has that spontaneity and that kind of looseness, but it's not. He rigorously writes it to the letter. He just has an ear for conversation. It's really impressive. Thunderbolts. Went to watch Thunderbolts again with my dad and my sister, and it held up to a second viewing. I thought it was terrific again. And I thought the action was really well directed, considering, you know, Jake Schreier, the director, did Beef. I didn't know how is he going to handle these huge action set pieces, and will it be in step with the rest of the film, or is the second unit going to handle that kind of stuff? And but he nailed it. I thought he did a fantastic job with them, especially the scene where the Thunderbolts are in the limo and they're getting chased by a military convoy, and Bucky shows up on a motorcycle, and you know, that whole sequence was really, really well shot and well edited, and kind of like you've always got the clarity of what's going on, and it's really fun and really energetic and exciting, and yeah, really terrific. The Last of Us Season 2. This, I think I spoke about it last month, and only the first couple of episodes had been on. I was very positive about it, and now I have kind of mixed feelings. Now that it's over, I have kind of mixed feelings that I'm going to channel into a video. I'm going to do a video about it. I still overall really liked it. I still really enjoyed it. You know, I've been seeing so much hate online about how it's Season 2's trash, and it's mid, and it's, you know. But the acting is still incredible from the entire cast, and the production design I find incredible, that it really brings the world of the games to life, and all the sets that they recreate scenes from the game look exactly like they do in the game, like uncannily so. And so, but I do have issues with it, but it's mainly down to the writing and the pacing and the you know, some of the dialogue, where things that go unsaid in the game or are done in subtler ways in the game are really spelled out in really on the nose ways in the TV show. And 7 episodes wasn't enough to cover that half of the game, you know, especially if you're going to spend 3 episodes in Jackson before Ellie heads to Seattle, and then do a whole episode of flashbacks. So you got 3 episodes in Seattle, so the entire bulk of the main plot is the same length as what's basically the prologue, the setup, the inciting incident. You know, I think it needed more episodes, but I loved how they're sticking to the way the game pulls off the perspective switch. And I'm excited for Season 3. I'm excited to see what Caitlin Dever does with that storyline. But yeah, I'll do a video about the whole season. The Studio. This is I was reviewing week to week, and there's another one I'm thinking of doing a video, or I've started writing a video about it. because this is easily my favorite new show of the year. This has been such a delight. The cast are amazing. The satire of the modern movie industry is so spot on. But yeah, as I say, I'm working on a video. It's going to be a big video about the whole season. Poker Face season 2. This is one I've been reviewing week to week as well and getting screeners for. And it's such a great premise for a show. Or, like a throwback to the old school detective shows like Columbo and Natasha Leone. That's like the perfect role for Natasha Leone to play this kind of like hard-boiled amateur detective. And it might not be 100% believable that she just, everywhere she goes, there's a murder to solve. But I like it. I like the formula. I'm always interested to see how's the murder going to go in the first act, and then how's Charlie going to come across the scene of the crime, and how's she going to figure it out. And, each episode they seem to come up with a cool new way to set up the murder, and then a cool new way for her to solve it. And they still haven't gotten to the stage where it feels repetitive at all, or derivative of itself. It's still, every episode still feels fresh and exciting. It explores a whole new world. Having said that, I haven't loved every episode this season. I thought the baseball one with Simon Rex was great in it as a kind of washed up has-been pitcher. But that one I kind of gave a bit of a negative review to, because it wrapped up the mystery too easily, and there wasn't, after the initial twist, there's usually a bunch of other twists that kind of like keep you on the edge of your seat, and this one didn't have any of that. But they've mostly been great. I like the Florida Man, Tiger King episode with Dinesh from Silicon Valley, Kumail Nanjiani as like a TikToker cop, influencer cop with a pet alligator, So I've been enjoying most of them, and then a couple of them I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Fast X. I don't know if I'd ever seen the whole of Fast X. I'd seen a lot of clips of it, a lot of clips of Jason Momoa's Joker. I mean, Dante Reyes, but he's basically playing what his version of the Joker would be. And it's, it's classic Fast and Furious. These movies get dumber and dumber every time. This one has John Cena sneaking into the cargo hold of a commercial plane where he left his surfboard, which actually is an aircraft, which I feel like the airport security would have picked up on the fact that his surfboard he's taken on board is actually a small plane. In the end is Dom's driving down an exploding dam. They're just ridiculous. But you know that going in, you can't, like, if you're watching Fast and Furious 10 and complaining that it doesn't adhere to the laws of physics, like, you haven't been paying attention. That's the point. That's what these things do. And it ends on a cliffhanger, and this is like Fast and Furious Infinity War, and the next one, Fast XI, is going to be Fast and Furious Endgame. And I'm like the idea that it's finally going to fucking end, but I really don't have faith that it's going to. I mean, Vin Diesel already floated the idea that this 2-parter will become a 3-parter, and then there will be spin-offs, and I don't think it's going to actually end. But I thought Fast X was a big improvement on Fast 9, or F9. And what was the one before that? The Fate of the Furious. Still hasn't reached the heights of Fast and Furious 7, which I think was maybe not the best, but definitely one of the best. And with Paul Walker's send-off, it was a perfect ending. They should have just ended it there. But that's a talking point that's been repeated ad nauseum. And of course they were not going to. It made $1 billion. So no fucking way were they going to end it there. But whatever. It's Fast and Furious. It's Fast and Furious. It does Fast and Furious things. It kills a couple of hours. You have some laughs. You have some fun. And ultimately, you're the exact same person at the end of it that you were at the start of it. Ocean with David Attenborough. This is a new David Attenborough documentary that was playing at the cinema, which is pretty cool to see. I went down with my dad, and it was a packed screening. I mean, it was like I hadn't seen the cinema that busy since they re-released Star Wars, the original Star Wars. I think just because people love David Attenborough. The man's a national treasure, and his nature documentaries are like unparalleled. And this one was really kind of alarming, really kind of shocking. It looks into how humanity's destroying the oceans, and the most memorable thing is it's has a camera attached to a trawler that puts just a giant net on the seabed and just smashes through everything in its path. It smashes through the coral. It picks up all kinds of marine life, even though they're only getting they're looking for one kind of fish. They're going to just pick up all the rest and kill them. And, watching this beautiful natural seabed just get smashed to pieces, and really, really upsetting and really depressing. And there's like 2% of the world's oceans that are protected from that kind of thing. And even then they work around it and still get to, like, a protected part of the ocean still has these trawlers in. It's like, well, it's protected in name only then, because there is no protection there. And it's really bleak, really sad, and it seems like towards the end of his life, David Attenborough's just going like, fuck it, let's expose these monsters. Yes, the beauty of nature, but also these fuckers who keep destroying it. And but it has a nice balance of, like, it's just so depressing to watch that stuff, but also there's an element of hope, because he's like, it would be so easy for this stuff to rebuild, and if we just leave it to fuck alone. Leave a small part of the ocean the fuck alone for a little bit. It will come back. The population of fish will replenish, and it'll sort itself out. Just stay the fuck away for a bit. And it's like, surely the fishing industry wants that to happen. You know, if you make all the fish extinct, there will be no more fish for you to fish, you fucking idiots. So it was an interesting one, because it's like classic David Attenborough. You get to see these gorgeous images of the beauty of nature and all these, you know, different types of fish and sea creatures, and it was really beautiful to watch on the big screen. And then you get the shitbags of humanity who are just fucking it all up. So you come out with mixed emotions, but it was really, really powerful, really, really well made. It made its point. The Wedding Banquet. I did a review of this, so you can check that out. But I like this movie. I thought it was really feel good. I haven't seen the original, so I can't compare it to that. But it was a great cast: Kelly Marie Tran and Bowen Yang and Lily Gladstone and Yoon Yo-jung from Minari. It's just a really wonderful little love story, really moving and touching and really funny, and you know, just a lovely film. Clueless. I rewatched Clueless, which I hadn't seen when I was a kid. This was one of my favorites, and I watched it 1,000 times, and I hadn't seen it in a little while. But watching it again now, I was just taken straight back to my childhood and why I loved it so much and why I watched it so much then. And you know, Alicia Silverstone as Cher Horowitz is such an iconic performance, and she's so funny, and there's just so many iconic lines and so many funny moments, and just a really solidly made kind of teen comedy. The Monster Squad. This was cool. I really enjoyed this. It was sort of like the Goonies meets Universal Monsters. It was like this group of kids who come together when Dracula and Frankenstein's monster and the Mummy all show up. The Wolfman will show up in their town, and it's like up to them to fight back. And it's like just the fun escapism you want from that kind of premise. It's as, you know, it's silly, it's kind of spooky, it's funny, it's, you know, it's all the things you want it to be. It's a blast. Slade in Flame. This is, or just Flame. I think it's Slade in Flame is the marketing name, so you know Slade is involved. It's a 50th anniversary of this movie that's described as like the Citizen Kane of rock musicals. And you know, me and my dad are fans of Slade, big fans of rock and roll, and so we went and watched it, and I think it worked best when it was kind of like a day in the life, Hard Day's Night kind of, you know, Slade going to early gigs at grungy nightclubs and getting into trouble, you know, because considering they're rock stars, they're not comedians. They have a really funny comedic dynamic, and they're like funny, like physical comedians, and they deliver lines in a really funny way, and that was delightful. But it tells this story of like the rise and fall of a band, and it doesn't really have enough time to do it or enough interest in developing that plot, because it's, I mean, maybe they should have just done the rise, because you get the rise where there's a couple of, you know, publicity things where they're on pirate radio, and then the pirate radio ship gets attacked, and that becomes a big news story and makes the band huge and popular, and then they're selling a ton of albums, and then all of a sudden they're all sick of each other, they're jaded with fame, and they can't stand to be around each other, and they want to break up the band. But it happened at like the flip of a switch. We have no idea why they got so jaded, why they got tired of fame, because they only just got famous and they were fine a minute ago. So I don't know if there was like 20 minutes of stuff that the studio said, that's a bummer, cut it out, and now we're missing bits of plot, but you know, it was a fun movie. Their music is incredible, and they had a really funny dynamic that I loved watching. But it just, either do the loose, laid-back, hangout, Hard Day's Night movie where it's just the band hanging out and there's no real story, or do the story but commit to it, you know? But it's kind of like somewhere in the middle. The Green Hornet. I did a video about this. It's the first of a series of It's Not That Bad, and I really enjoyed revisiting it. It's another one I watched a million times as a kid, and I think it's great. I think it's really funny, and the action is shot in a really interesting way because it's directed by Michel Gondry of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. They somehow got to do the Seth Rogen Green Hornet film. So I enjoyed rewatching it to do this video, and it was nice. I got a lot of positive responses like, hey, I really like this film too. It's so it was fun to kind of be like, yeah, I'm not alone. And just to stop miring in negativity for a bit and just be like, you know what, this is the thing people hate and I love it. Dora and the Lost City of Gold. I absolutely adored this film. I loved it so much. I was really enjoying Isabella Merced in The Last of Us as Dina. I thought she was fantastic. And I loved her in Alien Romulus and Instant Family with Mark Wahlberg. She was great in. And there was a lot of memes about how Dina is the one who does all the stuff with the maps. She's the one who figures out the journey on the map and connecting it to how Isabella Merced had played Dora the Explorer. And I used to love Dora the Explorer. That was one of my favorite shows when I was a little kid. Boots and Swiper and Diego. And I didn't watch the live action movie she was in because I was an adult by the time it came out. But I thought, I love this actor, I love this character. It'll be interesting to see what's her take on it. And I thought at best I would enjoy it and have a good time with it. But I fucking loved this movie. I thought it was absolutely incredible. It's like the first half of it is like what happens when Dora the Explorer is sent away from the jungle and has to go to just like a normal American high school, and she knows all these fun facts about animals and exploring and treasure, and she's just around normal teenagers. And Isabella Merced had so much fun with those scenes of just playing Dora's total obliviousness and total lack of self-awareness. And then Dora and Diego and a handful of the other kids at the school get like swept away on this crazy adventure in the jungle. And then it's flipped. Dora's in her element, and all these kids are like out of their element. They're the fish out of water. And it was just wonderful. So funny. She's so funny in it. And little CGI Boots has some really funny moments. And Swiper, they somehow got Benicio del Toro to voice Swiper. It's a really funny movie and also really sweet. And there's some really heartwarming moments. And like I was watching it thinking like, this is what Paddington in Peru should have been. This is like what Paddington in Peru is going for and doesn't quite manage. Succession. After I finished Silicon Valley, I rewatched Succession. It's really a perfect show. They ended it at the perfect time. They ended it in the perfect way. It really like there's no dead weight in the whole show. You watch season 1, 2, 3, 4 all back to back, and it's like you're watching this incredible Shakespearean tragedy play out. But also really funny, this time around, I found myself, I think like the first time I watched it, I've always loved Kendall as a character. I think the first time I watched it, I found myself like laughing at him. And then this time I found myself really sympathizing with him and like really like loving him. Because he, for all his flaws, he really is this just vulnerable little boy at heart. And you really see that. And you see the way Logan treats him has made him the way he is. And it's, Jeremy Strong did such a wonderful job of playing him as like a total douche, but also as just this really lovable, like there are so many times where he steps in to stand up for Roman, whether it's like when Logan hits him, he jumps in, he's like, don't you touch him. Or Mencken is like joking about how Roman was crying at the funeral, and Kendall's like, hey, no, not today. And he just is this really protective, loving older brother. It's such an incredible show because it's as compelling and as dark and deep and emotional as any drama, and as consistently hilarious as any comedy, and kind of like best of both worlds. Final Destination Bloodlines. There's another one I did a review of, but I was surprised. I thought this was the best Final Destination yet, like by far. And a big part of it is that you actually care about those characters. You care about that brother and sister. You actually want them to make it out alive, which I've never really had in a Final Destination film before. Usually I don't really care if they live or die, but in this one I really wanted them to live. And it's so funny. It subverts how you expect. Like, it understands audiences are savvy and they know that you're expecting a death in every scene. And they have so like the scene where they're trying to go through the revolving door, and it's like crazy that like the cousin is like so nervous to step through this door. But we've seen Final Destination films. We know he could die walking through that door. Like something could happen. Or like when they're tipping the vending machine and there's a big sign on it that says, don't tip this because it could crush you. And it just seems to signpost that someone's gonna die, and they lead you to believe that, and then when nothing happens, you're like it kind of just, it keeps you on your toes, It knows what you're expecting in every scene, and it kind of plays with that. Final Destination. Watched the original Final Destination after watching Bloodlines, and the first one actually isn't that good. I find the main character, Alex, to be insufferable. I don't know, I just don't, I don't like him at all. But I do like Ali Larter, and I do like Sean William Scott, but the whole thing's framed through Alex, and he's like the least interesting person in the cast. But you have to give it credit, like this is the one that started the formula. So you can't watch like the 6th iteration of that formula and go, oh yeah, they've really nailed it, and then go back to the first one where they had no template to go off and be like, this one's pretty naff. But it is pretty naff. Andor Season 2. Andor ended and I finally got around to watching it, and I thought it was incredible. I thought it was like I loved Season 1, and this one had even more pressure on it because it's got to live up to Season 1 and end the story and connect it to Rogue One. I thought I got off to a little bit of a slow start. The first half of the season wasn't like riveting, but the second half fucking is. The second half with, without wanting to spoil it, but like the stuff on Gorman and the stuff at the Senate with Mon Mothma and Luthen, and it was like the perfect ending to the show. It was the perfect culmination. Everything it's been building towards, it pays off spectacularly. And those last few episodes, it really ramps up the action, but like never at the expense of character. It doesn't just abandon character for spectacle. It's exploring character through the action and through the spectacle. I just thought it was absolutely incredible television. Like, regardless of, it's like, because it feels like reductive to call it the best Star Wars show, because obviously it is, but it's just one of the best shows, you know, regardless of whether it was a Star Wars thing or not. And the ending, like when they announced the Cassian Andor series, it's like, well, what's the point? We know how it ends. We know he dies. And like that part you can't see coming, that he's just gonna, you know, he's gonna go off and end up where he starts in Rogue One. But there's this other little thing which I don't want to spoil, although just saying this is kind of a spoiler. But there's this element of hope, this thing that you didn't see coming, this thing you didn't know was going to happen, that wasn't in Rogue One. That it's not just all these people are going to die so that the rebellion can flourish, and then Luke Skywalker comes in. There's this little sort of moment of hope, and that's what Star Wars is all about having a little glimmer of hope in all the darkness. And that was another thing actually. Watching what Cassian Andor has been through for the rebellion, it kind of made me pissed off at Luke Skywalker that he's just going to swoop in one day and blow up the Death Star and take all the credit and become the hero of the rebellion. Because it's like, no. Luthen Rael and Cassian Andor and all these people made so much sacrifices, put so much time in. You fucking farm boy. You don't get to just fucking waltz in and take all the credit. But that's an amazing goddamn show. And if you haven't checked it out, if you're a Star Wars fan, or even if you're not a Star Wars fan, this is just an amazing show about revolution, about how dictators take over democracies and how people come together to rise up and overthrow them, and the cost of that, and you know, the sacrifices you have to make, and it's sadly it's kind of the perfect time for an anti-fascist story like this. Rogue One. I rolled right into Rogue One at the end of Andor because Andor sets the stage perfectly for Rogue One. It leads directly into Rogue One, and then Rogue One feels like another 3-episode batch of Andor. And I found myself completely uninterested in anyone other than Cassian Andor. Like every time it would focus on Jyn Erso or the blind guy or the Riz Ahmed's character, I can't remember his name. Was it Bodhi or something like that? Every time it cut to someone who wasn't Cassian Andor, I was like, go back to Andor. Fuck these people. The Wiz. Did a retrospective review of The Wiz, which I'd never seen. I actually threw my hat in the ring to review it because it was like an excuse to watch it. Because I bought it on Blu-ray a little while back because one of the songs from it, I think Home, they sang at the Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo sang it at the Oscars. And in my Oscars video, I mistakenly called it a Whitney Houston song because Whitney Houston has done a very famous cover version of it, but she didn't actually do the version that was in The Wiz. And some people came at me in the comments. They were like, that's not a Whitney Houston song, you fuck. But now I've seen The Wiz, so you can all shut the fuck up. And I enjoyed it. I think I gave it 3 stars out of 5 in the review. Because I loved the musical numbers. I thought the songs were fantastic. Produced by Quincy Jones. You know, they were really catchy. And I loved the cast. I loved Diana Ross as Dorothy, was fantastic. You know, she just exudes star power and humanity and, you know, all the stuff you need in Dorothy. And Michael Jackson I thought was incredible as the Scarecrow. Because he obviously has the musical talents and the presence, the stage/screen presence for the musical numbers. I thought he did a really good job of playing the emotions of the Scarecrow. The insecurity of the guy who lets everyone push him around and is scared of everything. I thought it was a better performance than Ray Bolger, to be honest with you. He overacts the fuck out of the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz. Whereas Michael Jackson gives a much more of an, not understated, but, well, more understated than Ray Bolger. More emotional. I don't know how to describe it. It's better. It's better than Ray Bolger. But I just think Sidney Lumet was the wrong director for it. He doesn't... This is the guy who did Serpico and Dog Day Afternoon. So he gets the metaphors and the commentary and the allegories for race and, you know, discrimination, and there's even slavery in the film. And he gets all that, and he pulls that off really well and sort of seeds that into it. But he was the wrong guy for a lavish, glamorous musical because he doesn't move the camera. He doesn't, you know... Diana Ross and Michael Jackson are like dancing down the yellow brick road going, he's on down the road. And Sidney Lumet doesn't move the camera. He captures the whole thing in a wide shot. You can't even see the nuances of this choreography they're doing. He's too far away. So I think him being the director let it down. But I enjoyed it overall. We Own This City. This was David Simon's follow-up to The Wire about like police corruption in Baltimore. John Bernthal's in it. He's great. And a ton of actors from The Wire are in it. Marlowe is in it, and Duquan, and Jay Landsman, Herc was in it. Just a bunch of actors from The Wire came back to be in this. Poot. And it's a really interesting true story, and it kind of, you know, it uses all the filmmaking tricks and storytelling tricks that The Wire avoided. The Wire told its story as linearly as possible, and, you know, in this almost journalistic way of these are the facts, man, kind of laying out events that happen, like a fly on the wall documentary. We on this city uses all the stuff, framing devices and flashbacks and interesting scene transitions, where every time to tell you like the date a scene is taking place on, what's going on, they'll type out a police report on the screen, which is an interesting style, and it kind of was necessary to tell this story because it's complicated. It's on dual timelines. It's sort of like the rise of the gun trace task force and the downfall when a bunch of the officers are found to be corrupt and get convicted, including John Bernthal. So you're cutting between how he falls into corruption and the consequences of it, where he's in jail. And it's sympathetic. It's not like, fuck these corrupt cops. It's saying like, look, he could barely scrape by on his wage, so when he was at a crime scene and found a big bundle of cash, no wonder he pocketed some of it, you know? It's like The Wire did. It's looking at the larger institutional problems. It's like, it's not just saying, look how bad this guy is, he stole money from a crime scene. It's saying, why was he so desperate for money that he stole some from a crime scene, you know? It was a really interesting show. I found it was only 6 episodes, so it's pretty easy to binge. I think I knocked it out in like 2 days. And it's like, I wrote a little piece about this, but it's like the closest thing we'll get to The Wire Season 6, probably. Big Mouth Season 8 is the final season, which, again, I got screeners to review it. And this was cool, because normally you get screeners to like some website, you know, the Universal Media Village or something, or the HBO Media Village. But with Big Mouth, Netflix put the screeners in my Netflix account. Like they just gave me earlier access to the thing that was about to release in a few days, which I thought was really cool, you know, that they could just do that. They can just stick it in your Netflix account. And I loved the season. I mean, you can check out my review, but I thought it was like everything you'd want from the final season. It's still gross out, raunchy, you know, but it's also really sweet, and it's also educational. It's like all these things that kids worry about, puberty and periods, and you know, the complex issues of consent, and the fact that like kids these days are learning the wrong lessons about sex from watching porn, and all these things, all these very modern teenage issues the show deals with in a really funny way, in a really entertaining way, but also in a kind of an enlightening, well-informed way. And I like the ending a lot, you know, not wanting to spoil it, but it kind of like combines nostalgia for the past with like worries about the future. It's kind of like they're going back over the past, which is what a good finale does. It kind of like it looks back on the history of the show and how far have we come, but the future is looming over them, literally. It's kind of like this white void coming towards them throughout the whole finale episode. So it went out on a high note, which you rarely see in these kinds of long-running cartoon shows. Spaceballs. I rewatched Spaceballs, which, I mean, I don't have much to say about it, but it's a funny movie. It's, Rick Moranis' Dark Helmet. I love the alien parody towards the end where John Hurt comes back to play Kane and the thing's bursting out of his chest and he's like, oh, not again. And then, like, the little alien baby is dancing around to, hello, my baby, hello. It's like, it's the kind of shit only Mel Brooks could come up with. Just take this moment from this movie that horrified the world and turn it into the most ridiculous comedic set piece. Final Destination Bloodlines. I went to watch Bloodlines again with my dad. I enjoyed it just as much the second time, honestly, and it's interesting knowing where things are going to end up, you know, how that penny, when a kid drops a penny, how the penny is going to, like, knock a piano into someone's head and things like that. And you can kind of, like, see where all this stuff is going. And it was fun to watch, like, with my dad watching it for the first time. If I know something really gruesome's coming up, you know, I could kind of, like, take some Schadenfreude delight in his horror, you know. Final Destination 2. I still had Final Destination fever. And the second one was on Netflix, so I rewatched that one. And the second one's much, much better than the first one. This is the one that starts off with the logs falling off the truck and they go through people's heads. And this one was the lead was more likable than Alex in the first one, and they were kind of settling into, like, how far can we push this thing? If we're going to make this a franchise, like, how creative can we get with the deaths? And so the second one was a big improvement over the first one. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, or they've just rebranded it as Dead Reckoning because they didn't call the next one Dead Reckoning Part 2. But as I was going to watch the final Reckoning, I rewatched Dead Reckoning because even though they changed the name, it's Part 1 to the Part 2, and I hadn't seen it since it came out. I actually found it kind of underwhelming back then. But I think the problem with it then was the big final stunt is when Tom Cruise rides off the mountain on a motorcycle. And there's the big car chase through Paris. But they'd, like, spoiled everything. They'd, like, spoiled... Like, at that point, you'd seen him jump off that mountain 100 times. So when it happens in the movie, it has no effect at all. Especially because it's got such a stupid place in the story. Like, he didn't need to jump off a mountain to get onto a train. And also, how the hell did he know... Like, he comes flying in on his parachute at the exact second to save Haley Atwell. How did he know he was going to come into the train there, in that window? He's going onto a moving train from a mountain. I don't know, it's fucking stupid. And I hate the idea of an AI as the villain, the entity. This is what the entity wants. The Entity wants us to be divided. This is the last thing the Entity would expect. Shake my hand, and we'll defy the Entity. If I hear the word Entity one more time, I'm going to blow my fucking brains out. But I did enjoy watching Dead Reckoning again. I think, not going in with the anticipation that there's going to be another big stunt that we haven't seen, and knowing how it's going to play out, I could enjoy it some more. And the Paris car chase is amazing, and jumping off the mountain is amazing. It just has such a ridiculous place in the plot. I think Dead Reckoning was when the approach of let's pick a load of places we want to go and a load of stunts Tom wants to do, and we'll write a story around that, finally caught up to them and finally stopped working. And it was a miracle that it ever worked in the first place. But yeah, that was honestly though, with all this shit with the Entity, like I was watching Dead Reckoning again to go into the final Reckoning knowing what the hell was going on with the submarine and the Entity and everything, and I still didn't, even after having just watched part 1. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. After the Dead Reckoning, I went and watched the Final Reckoning. They were showing an early screening at my cinema, and I liked it. I thought, here's the thing, there's 2 sequences that make it an absolute must-see on the big screen, make it an absolutely incredible experience on the big screen. It's the scene where he goes down into the submarine, which hadn't been over-advertised in the trailers, so you could still be caught by surprise by some of the crazy shit Tom Cruise does in it. And the sequence where he jumps onto a plane and then jumps onto another plane and he's hanging off the wing, because shots of that were all over the trailers, but the trailers didn't give away too much about it. They didn't give away how it was all going to shake out, and that he was going to be going up and doing loop-de-loops, and because Gabriel's flying the plane, he's trying to shake him off, so that didn't give away too much either. And that was those 2 sequences are fucking amazing. They're like some of the best action cinema I've ever seen, and an absolute blast to watch on a big screen. But in between those 2 sequences is like 2 full hours of the entity exposition. We need to get the source code and put it onto this drive, and then plug it into this server and get it onto this drive, and then pull it out before the entity knows it's trapped, or the entity launches the nukes, and it's all bollocks. The Entity isn't interesting as a villain, in a franchise with so many great human villains, and you just don't fucking need that much explanation. No one cares. And in interviews I've seen Christopher McQuarrie, the director, saying like, I don't trust exposition. If it can go unsaid, it'll go unsaid. And fair enough, but why did you put so much exposition in your film then? I agree with you, exposition sucks, so why is there so much of it in your film? Final Destination 3, this was also on Netflix, and this is the one with the roller coaster where the people all die on a roller coaster that goes off its rails, and it's another one. It's gnarly, it's fun, it's very gruesome, but like I still don't care about any of the people. Maybe Mary Elizabeth Winstead, because she's a wonderful actor, but it's just like more of the same. Final Destination 5, they didn't have 4 on Netflix, but they had 5, and this is actually a really strong one. This is the one that it starts off on a bridge that collapses, and then I think this was the one that introduced the idea that you can kill someone and sort of like take their remaining years. If you kill someone who was going to die in 10 years, then you get their 10 years they were supposed to have before you killed them, which is kind of needlessly complicated. And Bloodlines actually did more with that notion. Like, they have a discussion of how do you know how long someone has left, and they're on a maternity ward and they just kind of look over at some babies. It was a really dark little joke. But the best thing about 5, spoiler warning, is when it turns out to be a secret prequel to the first one. Like, they're on a plane to Paris, and some of these high school kids get dragged off because they're freaking out, and you realize, oh shit, this is that flight, and it exploded because Death wanted to get to these 2. So that was really cool. Lilo and Stitch, there's the remake, which I did a review of, but I really enjoyed it. I was so moved by it. I thought it was directed so beautifully by Dean Fletcher Camp, and the acting was so wonderful. Maya Kealoha and Sydney Agadong, I fully believed were sisters as Lilo and Nani, and the Stitch design was perfect, And they made a few changes, adaptational changes, but the core of the story, the heart of the story is the same. And it's been really annoying to see, people spread bullshit, People I saw someone saying that Disney made Lilo a fan of Bruno Mars instead of Elvis to make it appeal to a modern audience. And people were replying to that comment like, oh, this is bullshit. I hate Disney for doing this. I'm so glad I didn't watch it. I was like, that's not true. She's an Elvis fan. They didn't make her. I think Uptown Funk is in it in one wedding scene where Stitch crashes a wedding. wedding. But it's not, she still loves Elvis. She still has a huge Elvis record collection. She still plays Suspicious Minds out of Stitch's mouth. Or like people saying like, oh yeah, Nani abandons Lilo so she can go and party at college. It's like, no, that's not what happens at all. The social services are going to take Lilo away no matter what. So David's grandma adopts her, and then Nani goes to college, but she brings a portal gun so she can come and see Lilo every single day anyway. No one abandons anyone. Shut the fuck up. Maya K. Aloha is just absolutely delightful as Lilo. She's hilarious and she's so adorable, and her relationship with Stitch on screen is like exactly what it needs to be. I thought it was great. So, you know, you can watch it and not like it, but just don't believe everything you read online. Truth or Dare. This was, you know, it was a stupid premise of horror film where people get stuck in this game of Truth or Dare, where if you don't tell the truth or you don't do the dare, you die. And it's like just this stupid thing of taking like a party game and making it a supernatural death thing. And it, you know, it is really stupid, and there's nothing about any of these characters that's likable enough that you give a shit whether they do the dare or not, or they get killed. But I don't know, by about halfway through I'd kind of gotten into it, and it became interesting to see how they're going to use these characters' weaknesses against them. Like there's the girl who's like an alcoholic, and her dare is to drink a full bottle of vodka while walking around the edge of the roof of the house. And so all of her friends are like holding a mattress underneath her, following her around to see, to catch her when she falls. That was a good sequence. That was the thing. There's a lot of good sequences, but the premise was so dumb, and the whole thing was just a misguided idea. So whatever. The Phoenician Scheme. I really liked this movie. I really liked the idea of a Wes Anderson spy film, and I thought it lived up to the promise of that. And Benicio del Toro is hilarious in it, like really dryly hilarious. And Mia Treepleton, or Threepleton, I've seen people say. I googled it, so I pronounced it right in my review of it, and it said Treepleton. But then I've heard people in interviews say Threepleton. So she is fantastic in it. She's hilarious, and it just in such a dry, deadpan way that's like perfect for Wes Anderson's humor. And Michael Cera was great, and I just had a ton of fun with it. It was really funny, and I was like engaged with like where's the plot going, which I think it was very well paced. It wasn't like Isle of Dogs and French Dispatch and some recent Wes Anderson films I've found really slow and boring, and this didn't have that problem. Braveheart. I don't know if I'd ever seen Braveheart all the way through. I'd certainly seen sections of it, or maybe I'd caught like half of it on TV once. But it was another case where the opportunity came up to write a retrospective review, and I thought this will be an excuse to watch it finally. And I actually quite enjoyed it. Like the historical inaccuracies, even I, as someone who knows nothing about history, could tell how flagrantly inaccurate it was. And there's this weird tonal mishmash of really sappy, saccharine romantic scenes and really gruesome, bloody, hard-hitting battle scenes, and kind of feels like you're watching two totally different movies stitched together. But I love those battle scenes. Those are some of the best battle scenes of all time. And, I feel like Mel Gibson really took the right lessons from working with like Richard Donner and working with George Miller and these great action directors to direct fucking great action scenes where they're bloody and messy and chaotic, but you know what's going on. You know the geography of the battle. And so they were really well done. I think I gave it 7 out of 10 or something, I think, because it basically is, the underlying point is it's useless as a historical record, but it's extremely entertaining as just an action blockbuster, Transformers 1. This one came to Paramount Plus, and I really liked it. I mean, it was like watching the old 80s cartoon again, which I enjoyed as a kid. And I wasn't on board with the idea of recasting Peter Cullen at first, but Chris Hemsworth's a pretty damn good Optimus. And Brian Terry Henry was a great Megatron. And it was interesting to see how they were friends and they would eventually fall out. And there's some disturbing scenes where you see Megatron's descent into evil. And it was just really sad to see like how much Optimus, who's like defined by and named after his optimism, really, really wants to save his friend from going down this dark path, and he just can't. Like his friend is just so far gone. And you kind of see that they're like Professor X and Magneto. They're kind of like these two like sci-fi avatars for like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, where they both want the same thing, but they want to go about it in very different ways. They both want, they're like the working class. They're like the underclass of Cybertron, and they want rights, but they want to get those rights in very different ways, and that creates conflict between them, even though they want the same thing. And it, considering this franchise started with Michael Bay just having these ugly CGI robots beat each other up, and Megan Fox straddling a motorcycle in the most awkward way she could possibly paint it. This is a fantastic movie. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. I went to watch Final Reckoning again with my dad, and this is the reason. Usually I go to the cinema with my dad and my sister, and the reason it's just been my dad recently is because she's got exams. she's busy. Just in case you were worried. But, and again, like the submarine sequence and the plane sequence were amazing again, incredible to watch on the big screen. But even more so the second time, that exposition and those long paragraphs of over-explanation really stuck out. And I just, they really dragged the film down. It has these two unbelievable action sequences, and they're just dragged the fuck down. And we were saying afterwards, me and my dad were talking, and, there's a lot of moments between characters where they don't say anything. Like, Ethan Hunt will look at some guy, Shea Wiggum's partner or someone who he hasn't built a relationship with at all, and just kind of nod at him, and you're supposed to know what they're saying to each other. And I think that's what Christopher McQuarrie meant when he said, we leave things unsaid. But that needs to be said. All this bullshit about the entity doesn't need, that could be left unsaid. But this guy who he's met like once, who he just nods to, what's their relationship? When he joined Ethan's team, everyone else went off and Ethan went off on his own, and those guys all went off. So he has no relationship with this guy. So what are they saying to each other with this nod? So it seemed like all this needless explanation about the entity that didn't need to be said was said, and these moments of actual human interaction that needed to be said went unsaid. And it's like, no, flip it, please. The Final Destination. This is Final Destination 4. They call it The Final Destination for some reason. And I skipped this one in my binge because it wasn't on Netflix. But then I found it on Prime. So I still had Final Destination fever after watching the other 5. So watch this one. This is widely considered to be the worst one. And it is the worst one. It's the one that starts off at like a NASCAR race. And there's like a weirdly, really openly racist character who, like, I get we're at a NASCAR race, but he's like, that character just is dropping M-bombs, and it's just really uncomfortable to watch. It's like, I'm here to see people get killed. I'm not here to see racism. But yeah, this is the weakest one. This is the worst one. The characters are just absurdly unlikable. It's not just like, well, there's maybe not so much to like about them. They're bad people. Most of them are really bad people. And there's a couple of good deaths in it. This is the one where the guy's sitting on the pool drain and has his intestines ripped out through his ass. And that's funny. But this was the one they made in 3D, and they rely so heavily on the 3D gimmick, and it's just, really lame. Nonnas. This is a new Netflix film with Vince Vaughn, and I adored it. I mean, I just kind of stuck it on. I didn't know what to expect. But it's this really sweet story where Vince Vaughn has lost his mom, and he opens this restaurant, and he hires a load of, like, local grandmas, because he wants that's what Nonna means, I believe, in Italian, or Italian-American. Because he wants this restaurant to serve food that feels like your grandma's cooking, so he gets a lot of old ladies. And it's a star-studded cast. Got Lorraine Bracco from Goodfellas and Sopranos, and Susan Sarandon and Talia Shire, and it's a funny dynamic that it's like Vince Vaughn and all these bickering old ladies, but it's also like, it's a really good idea. Like, who wouldn't want to go to a restaurant that feels like your grandma's home cooking, and it's an uphill battle to open a restaurant. He's getting safety inspectors, and he's running out of money, and he's got to get his friends to cover for him at his job. His boss is suspicious that he's starting this other business, and all these problems that you have to overcome, and these old ladies stick by him through the whole thing, and they become this like little family, and it was really beautiful and really touching, and it wasn't until the end I realized it was a true story. At the end they show the real restaurant, the real Vince Vaughn guy character, and there's a real restaurant. It was a real idea, and it's made the whole thing even more emotional. It was a true story. But it's a really just like, it's really sincere and moving. And if you want to see a feel-good movie, Nonnas, check it out on Netflix. Asteroid City. After watching The Phoenician Scheme and really enjoying it, I thought, like, I'll rewatch Asteroid City. I hadn't seen it since it was in cinemas. I basically had the same thoughts I had when I first watched it, which is, like, I really like the Junior Stargazer storyline, the precocious, prodigious kids coming of age, and how they're, like, the weird outsiders in their schools, but they all come together for this competition, and they find, like, their people, and then an alien spaceship shows up, so they're all quarantined in the town, and it becomes this existential thing of, what's out there, and how do we matter? And I loved all that stuff. I loved Wes Anderson doing a sci-fi movie. I loved Wes Anderson doing Close Encounters. But I didn't like the framing device that's a play. They talk about how it's the most brilliant playwright, and he's written this really profound, brilliant play. But it's like, it's Wes Anderson dialogue. It's we're not watching Chekhov, we're watching like a Wes Anderson movie. Everyone in the quote-unquote real world talks like everyone in the play, because they're all Wes Anderson characters. So yeah, I thought that was all totally unnecessary. But the movie itself, what the movie actually is, I really liked. American Graffiti. I love this movie. This is like the original, like the Dazed and Confused style, coming of age, sprawling ensemble comedy about a bunch of kids on a crazy night, and of a specific time and place where in Dazed and Confused it's Richard Linklater going back to the Texas suburbs in the 70s. And in American Graffiti it's George Lucas goes back to California in the 60s when he grew up. Everyone's cruising around in their old cars and getting into races and picking up girls, and just it's this fun nostalgic look at like, to be young again, Funny Pages. I was interested in watching this because Owen Klein, the director, played himself in the studio. And in the studio, they're talking about how great his film Funny Pages was. And I hadn't even heard of it. So I bought the Blu-ray. And it was fantastic. I can imagine it's like not for everyone's tastes. Because it's like Napoleon Dynamite if Napoleon Dynamite had a really, really fucked up, dark, R-rated sense of humor. You know? Where it's about this young, like, teenage cartoonist who, like, the opening scene is his, like, sleazy old mentor poses nudes for him to draw. And he kind of seems to get a bit uncomfortable and he leaves. He says he has to go to his job. Then the teacher comes out and it's like curb crawling and is saying, like, do you feel weird about how I just got naked in front of you? And he's trying to say, no, I just have to get to my job. And as he's talking to him, his car gets hit and he's killed, the teacher. And that sets up the movie you're going to watch. That's like, if that's off-putting, that whole awkward situation is off-putting, then you're not going to like the film. But if you find that darkly funny and twisted and enjoy how fucked up it is, like I did, you're going to really love the film that follows, because it just is more shit like that happening to this poor kid. And it mostly is framed through his relationship with this older guy who used to work at Image Comics, who he like idolizes and he wants him to teach him the ways. But this guy is just unstable. He's crazy. And he's played by the guy who did Wade's voice in GTA. And every time he's on screen, he does something really erratic and unpredictable. And it's like really funny to watch, especially because you see the kid's parents who are so suspicious of this guy and so wary of him hanging out with their son. That it was really funny. Really fucked up, but really funny. D.E.B.S. It's kind of a cult classic, I think. And it's kind of like, the best way I can describe it is like Charlie's Angels meets But I'm a Cheerleader, you know? But I'm a Spy would be a good name for it. It almost plays like a TV pilot, but it's a movie, because it's the premise of it would make a good TV show. Where it reveals that like the SAT tests have like these secret questions buried in them where it's to test aptitude for espionage. And so all these girls get picked up to be spies. And so it starts off kind of parodying the tropes of spy movies. But it really becomes about this young woman figuring out her sexuality as she falls in love with the villainess, played by Jordana Brewster from Fast and Furious. And it uses all the other spies think she's a turncoat. She's not in love with the villain, she's in league with the villain. And it kind of uses the judgment against a spy who's defected to the other side as like a metaphor for the judgment of straight people against gay people. And it was, for a film that came out in like 2004, it was a surprisingly enlightened look at like prejudice and sexuality. And, you know, it was considering it's this Kim Possible spy movie spoof as well. I thought it was really clever. I thought it was really cleverly done. A clever way of exploring those themes through this genre storyline. Mad Men. Since I finished Succession, I've been rewatching Mad Men. I'm on about season 4 now, I think. And it's been interesting because I watched Mad Men when it was on, you know, but I was like a kid for its entire run. I was like 17, I think, when it ended. And that was in season 7. So I've been watching it for a long time and enjoying certain things. Like I enjoyed all the stuff with Pete Campbell. I think you don't have to be an adult to find him ridiculous and laugh at him. And I mean, I always enjoyed the show, but now I'm watching it as a grown-up. There's certain subtleties I'm picking up on and nuances that I would have missed when I was like 12. But I'm really enjoying revisiting it. The cast are amazing, you know, Christina Hendricks and Elizabeth Moss and obviously John Hamm, John Slattery. It's phenomenally acted, and, you know, some of the historical stuff is quite on the nose, where they'll be having a conversation around the water cooler and they'll say like, so what's the deal with this stuff in Vietnam? And, you know, will they just bring up historical events to be like, it's 1963. But most of it's baked in really well, where it's like the news of the Kennedy assassination will be like the backdrop to an episode. Or like after Marilyn Monroe dies, all the secretaries in the office are like distraught over it. You know, most of the time it's interesting the way they weave in history into the characters' lives. But I'll probably have finished Mad Men by the time I talk to you next month, so we'll dig into it then. But yeah, so that's everything I watched in May, and I'll speak to you at the end of June, when we'll already be halfway through 2025. Time is flying by, doesn't it? Let me know if you have any recommendations of any cool new things for me to check out, and I'll speak to you at the end of June. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Remember to like and subscribe and click on the little bell. And also seize the day and call your mom and be kind to yourself.